Hi, this is Jill Peck from Channel 8 Cable News in Longmont, Colorado. Today we're talking to Vern Zurick, who is also called Thunder. He was sworn in at 17 but went into active duty at 18. So tell me why you were assigned to the Air Corps.
Well, it turns out that coming from Louisville, I didn't know much about the ocean. I chose the Army, went to Denver, took the exam for the Army Air Corps, passed it because we had good teachers in Louisville. And I was sworn in, and the colonel came and said, "We'll be calling you and go home and get prepared." But then he looked at the service record he gave me and said 17. He said, "Oh, you're too young. We've sworn you in, but we won't call you to active duty for another year." But I graduated from high school in June, and on July 20th, I was on a troop train on the way to basic training in Miami Beach, Florida.
So what did you do first?
Well, since I was in high school without any college, I went to, after basic training in Miami Beach, they sent me to Springfield College, Massachusetts, to get some extra college, but then it wasn't too long. I was on my way to Nashville, Tennessee, and then to Alabama, where I went to pre-flight school, and then to Florida again, where I went into gunnery school. Finally, navigation school at Hondo, Texas, and then on the way to Walla Walla, Washington, where I was a navigator on a B-24 bomber.
Did you ever get airsick?
I think I did. We had a funny breakfast one time, and we were still cadets flying in twin-engine planes, and we were over the Grand Canyon. And it was rough, and boy, did I, all of us everybody on the plane got sick except the pilot himself.
So as a navigator, you were pretty good at your job, huh?
Oh, I had to be, I should say, because we flew out of Walla Walla, Washington there, and we flew the Cascades, patrolled the Cascades. It turns out that the Japanese sent thousands of balloons with incendiary bombs over to the United States to start fires in our forests, in our cities, and disrupt the war effort. And we were looking for those balloons, and the gunners would try to explode the incendiary bombs before they hit the ground. So my job was to make sure we didn't hit any mountains while they were diverting the airplane toward those balloons. And boy, do I remember those mountains. Mount Shasta, Mount Lassen, Mount Jefferson, Mount Hood, Mount Adams, Mount Rainier. So I was really careful, had to be careful, know where we were every second of the time so we didn't hit those mountains while we were looking for those Japanese balloons. Before we took off, and a lot of times they showed us maps of the different mountains. There were crosses on those mountains that some of our squadron companions had hit, just to make sure that we knew what we were up against when we took off. Depending upon your altitude, if you could see them against the sky, they were easier to spot, but against the ground, they were hard to find. Our whole squadron was out looking for them, so some of the planes were very effective and were able to stop any disruption of our military effort here in the United States. Here's the B-24J, and it has a double tail, and it has a nose turret up here, and then there's a ball turret down here, and here's the tail gun down here. And I was in the nose. The B-24 was designed and built by Consolidated Aircraft Company in San Diego, California, and Fort Worth, Texas. And pretty well hand-built. And they needed more of these bombers. They were heavier, and they carried a heavier bomb load than the B-17 and were faster. So they went to the Ford Motor Company in Willow Run, Michigan, to build them. And the production line was a mile long. And there are more B-24s built than any other warplane during World War II. But we'd be on the runway, the head of the runway, getting ready to take off, and as the pilot would push the throttles forward, sometimes he would say, "Let's see if this old Ford will fly." And I'll tell you about our crew. The pilot was 23. The co-pilot was 20. I was 19. I was the navigator. The bombardier, the northern bomb sight with visual, was 23. The flight engineer was 20. All the gunners were 18, except for the tail gunner, Peter Polinsky. He was 25. He was the old man of the crew. He was from Louisiana. The co-pilot was from Georgia. The gunner, some of the gunners were from New York. And then Peter Polinsky was from Hamtramck, close to Detroit, I think. And then we had a fellow from Utah. I was from Colorado. Mm-hmm. So we had quite a crew from almost everywhere in the United States.
Did y'all get along?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we sure did. But we were so busy, we didn't have much time for socializing, I suppose.
Yeah. So what did you do on your time off?
Oh, we didn't have much time off.
I would imagine.
But,
so you slept part of it?
Yeah, and we had plenty of time for calisthenics. You had to really stay in good shape. And always in training. And we always, we had navigation. We'd go into the navigation training area and you could see all the stars. We kept shooting the stars. And also we had a tower for practicing bombing, and I was a backup bombardier when we were flying during the day. We were up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we had the general briefing at 5 in the morning. Then we broke up into the separate groups, bombardiers, navigators, gunners, and I plotted our course, had time to plot the course and make sure that if I pre-flighted my part of the airplane, that all my instruments were working. We took off at 8 then in the morning and flew for 6 hours, landed at 2 in the afternoon, and then we debriefed for another hour, and then finally we're off the next day, and we flew every other day rather than every day.
Did you ever try piloting?
Oh yeah. So there, the pilot was really careful. He said, if something happens to me, we've got to get the rest of the crew back. So he sat me down in the co-pilot seat and said, now you're going, I could fly the V-24 level fairly easy. He said, now you're going to land it. So now I'm coming up on the runway, and all of a sudden the runway's over here. So I give it right rudder. We didn't have hydraulics, so you just had to really use your strength. And then I gave it right rudder. Now the runway's over here. No, it's over here. I couldn't line the plane up with the runway. And then we're going down, getting closer to the runway, and the co-pilot's calling out the airspeed. 150, 140, 130, 125, 120. Get the nose down. With that, I jumped out of the co-pilot's seat and I said, oh, take over. So I never did land the B-24. Sometimes we had a hard landing, and then we'd say, that was the co-pilot that landed that time. We've had emergency landings too. We landed at Luke Field, Arizona on emergency landing one time, and it's a fighter pilot station. And all the fighter pilots came out to see the B-24, and as we were getting out of the plane, there's 10, the crew was 10 of us. The fighter pilots were all counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people on this bomber. And then came time to take off, and the runways were fairly short at the fighter fields. Mm-hmm. So they all came out to see us if we were going to be able to take off or not in that short field.
Plane, yeah.
So, and then we had a few emergency landings, even at Pasco, Washington, state of Washington. And then on the other side, Cherry Point, North Carolina, Marine Corps airfield. And same type of thing with all those fighter pilots coming out to see the B-24.
So, what constitutes an emergency landing? What happens?
Oh, well, let me just recount what happened one time. We're on the strafing range, and we're 500 feet, and the gunners are all strafing with their machine guns. We got an engine on fire. Well, 500 feet, an engine on fire is pretty bad. Can't bail out. And and what are you going to do? You can really have problems. But the pilot started climbing. He went up to 2,500 feet, and he dove the airplane and got really high speed and blew out the flame. And we were going back to Walla Walla, Washington, and we pointed out we had an emergency. Clear us to land directly. And we were on 3 engines, and we landed, and there was the fire trucks, and there were the ambulances and everything like that. And we looked at the engine, and there was oil all over that engine that had caught on fire. But fortunately, we got it out and made it back safely. That Columbia River Gorge is really something to see, and it's wide. And sometimes we had 3 B-24s in formation going down the Columbia River, and we could look up and see people up on the rim of the gorge. We were that low. So.